This is a museum consortium. It's 10/31/15, and we have the Honorable Lieutenant Governor Susan Ellsperman here to lead off the discussion. We have multiple museums here from southwestern Indiana, also from Kentucky, and we're going to try to have a brainstorming event with the USI facilitating the event. We're getting ready to get started with the lead-off speaker, Susan Ellsperman. Thank you all for coming. This is the agenda for the Freedom Heritage Museum Consortium. This is starting. We're getting ready to have an introduction by Rick Caskell, then Sue Ellsperman, then Danielle Lidell will lead the discussion. Mike Strumpf will also continue the leading of the discussion. Then we'll have breakout groups with discussion with Steve Stump and Mike Tisson. And Danielle will summarize later in the day. That's our criteria for today.
Gotten coffee, juice, or something light to eat, please help yourself. This morning, my name is Rick Caskell, and I'm going to be wearing a Freedom Heritage Museum hat this morning for a few hours. I am on behalf of the Freedom Heritage Museum, USI, Board of Directors at Freedom Heritage Museum, and the airport. We welcome everybody here today. I was thinking about museums on the drive-in this morning, and it occurred to me that, on the public sector and on the private sector, regardless which way your path has brought you here today, anything worthwhile that is achieved in life, it starts with a passion. And from that passion, a vision emerges. And so it's real easy to see where you are today, and with your passion and vision, see where you want to be tomorrow. And that's my perception where the Freedom Heritage Museum is at. And there's a lot of things that have to happen in between the two to really become successful. Of course, money helps. Just about all ideas are accomplished if you have enough money. But today's not about money. Today is really about passion, and it's about the ideas that people have. And we have basically two fundamental goals that we hope to accomplish today. And the first one, from my perspective, is to learn about things we don't know. And I call it, we don't know what we don't know. And because Freedom Heritage Museum is a relatively new organization, we'd like to count on, the veterans within this industry, such as your folks, to help us become a little bit faster, smarter, cheaper, things of that sort. And then the second goal is, how could all the museums work together and raise all our boats? And that's even the bigger goal of the two today. How can we work together and we're all more successful at the end of the day? So to help us achieve that event, that goal, we've asked USI, Dr. Michael Tisson and Daniela and their team at OD out at USI to run this collaborative event today to help us identify some of the things that we might be able to do to be faster, smarter, cheaper, and so we can keep the passion alive and keep it going. So with that, I'd like to introduce Rich Litoff, who's the chairman of the board of the Freedom Heritage Museum, to say a few words. And thank you, Tim.
I want to reiterate and welcome and thank everybody for coming, because this really is important. As you all know, history is our past, but it's led to our future, and we're the keepers of history in our culture. It's important to have museums. It's important to have the nonprofit organizations to keep that flame alive. But it's a challenge, and we need to come together. This is an opportunity to get better acquainted with one another, but also to share our experiences, our knowledge. So as Rick was pointing out, the opportunities and the purpose here is to bring us all up and help everyone out to be more successful. So here's an opportunity to share what your concerns your knowledge, but obviously this is just a start. We can't do it all today, but this is a great way that now we're now connected. So I want to welcome you to our new interim home here at the Freedom Heritage Museum, here at the airport, at our hangar. And we'll have more time here today to discuss. First of all, I'd like to introduce very briefly, you can just wave your hands, our board members. One of our most busiest, energetic one is Dr. Mark Browning. Without him, along with Rick Caskell, we've got Pat Doris in the back, we've got Jan Howell in the back, we've got Dick Kuhn in the back, we've got Paul Black up here front, there's Jack Buttram in the back, I think we've got, and then, well, I've got a special introduction here for one of our board members, and that's Alan Sanderson. He's actually the gentleman here in the center. He's the only one on our board that's a World War II vet, but a very special World War II vet because he's a former combat pilot of the P-47. Home of P-47. But this morning I have a special opportunity and honor to introduce our Lieutenant Governor, who's going to open up today's. So everybody knows about you and welcome.
Thank you, Rick.
Glad
Thank you.
to have you here.
Well, good morning, everybody. It is a real pleasure to be here, and I can't tell you, Alan, how much an honor it is to be here with you. I've known Rich and go back a little way with him and a number of people in this room. So let me just kind of position this up first. Thank you for the opportunity to kick off this very special day. This is a very cool event. What you're all trying to do with the museums that you're a part of, the historic sites that you're part of across southern Indiana, and I think we have some folks from Kentucky, the Henderson area, yes, as well. So that's terrific. It's so important. And I'm going to make a connection to quality of place there. So we know, and Michael, nobody knows better than you from your background, that today people really choose to live where quality of place is. And if you've been a part of, in southern Indiana, southwest Indiana, the Regional Cities Initiative, you know how important that is and how we're trying to make sure that our communities are great quality of place. And as Lieutenant Governor, I have a couple of agencies that have a lot of responsibility around that. One is where Michael came out of OCRA, Office of Community and Rural Affairs, where we really work closely to make sure all of our communities, large and small, are great places to live, work, and play. And so stellar communities and the programs we've done to build that are very, very important. Probably one a little closer to people in here is called Tourism Development, or Office of Tourism Development statewide. And it's one that I hope you all are taking full advantage of. Our state has made doubled the investment in the last budget to make sure that we are doing what needs to be done in tourism. Our role is at the state is to partner with entities like yours. There are grants available out there. Lou Porter, who I know she was invited today, she had a little bit of a big deal last night with her African American masquerade ball, which I was at last night, so she may have gotten home a little late. Maybe she'll show up yet. But Lou actually serves on the new Tourism Council that's responsible to help see those grants, but they are meant to help ensure that quality of place and making our communities even stronger in the areas of tourism. And you've seen probably our campaign, our Honest to Goodness Indiana campaign, which is really meant to partner with and raise the level up of how Indiana is viewed on the tourism front. And I want to tell you that that is working. We're getting a 5-to-1 return on our investment as a state. And that is important because we're looking for partners here. We may, in the museum field, you may want to do that, where we're really partnering with of what are those sites. French Lick's been on board, Northern Indiana, Central Indiana, the Dunes, you know, so as we look for Holiday World, so we look for those opportunities to share the stories. And I think that's what it is, especially as we get to our bicentennial in 2016, helping Hoosiers understand what they have here and our history that goes with it. So let me share the other story that Rich and I shared this summer, so I know I'm not a good history buff. I'm learning more as I'm out and about, but I happen to be traveling to Austria and Germany this summer. And we were there, as Jim Hagedorn knows from Ferdinand, we have a close relationship with one of the descendants of the Habsburg Empire, Marcus Habsburg, and had invited us to Austria. And then he kind of hosted our time over there. And we were on the Tronsee in Austria. And the gentleman, actually the father of the boat owner, the captain of the boat, but this is the father of the captain, she was a young lady, he was telling us about the P-47 that had come into the Tronsee, and that his father was the last, one of the very few people, he was a young child at the time, and saw that P-47 go into the lake. And then he proceeded to tell us that he, the person on our boat, helped bring that P-47 out of Tronsee Lake in Austria. And as I'm sitting there thinking, this is very familiar. Well, how do I know this story? So that evening I emailed Rich. I said, Rich, is this one of the P-47s, the Dottie Mae that came from Evansville? And he immediately emailed me back. So we do have the gentleman's name for Rich. So it's the connecting, and I'm sure, Alan, those times are very much of yours. But how important to pull that together, and now to see the P-47 out here, that you have the trainer. How do we connect all those dots? We know this area and the impact we've had on history, and how do you help people like me who are not as deeply knowledgeable to appreciate and experience and be part of? So for all those reasons, we appreciate what you're doing here. Let me give you just a little preview. I'm going to preview the act that's coming next on the facilitation. So the other piece, they were kind enough actually to say, would you like to help facilitate today? And I wish I could say yes, because most people in here who know me know that that's maybe the true love of my life, is facilitating problem solving and seeing the great things that come out of groups when you bring good minds together. You're in good hands today. I know Daniela Vidal is doing an amazing job. You know, it's fun when you get to pick the person who's going to take your old job at USI. I had the pleasure and have worked with Michael. I know Michael's doing a great job. You're going to have a process today that really helps bring your best thinking out. And that cannot be understated, because the really good things happen when as Rick said, it's not all about the money. It's often about bringing the best thinking out. And so today I want to really encourage you to put preconceptions to the side, bring out your best facts, your best thinking, your best ideas, and see what can happen. I'm going to share with you my favorite project that I'm working on right now, and it was one that Lee Hamilton, Congressman Hamilton, you know, one of our, what I call our two great statesmen in Indiana, Richard Lugar and Lee Hamilton. Lee is the co-chair of our Bicentennial Commission. And about 9 months ago, he let it be known that shame on us if we celebrate 200 years of history, but we don't look forward, if we don't spend any energy looking forward. Well, that request got to me because, of course, my background is facilitation, and he wanted to facilitate. He wanted us as a state to look forward and to do some bicentennial visioning. So I said yes, and have really now, what we are doing at his request is bringing thought leaders from across the state of Indiana together in groups of 10 or 15 to look forward 25 to 50 years in Indiana. What do we want to be? So from areas of the economy to public safety, to education, to health and welfare, which is the one we did this week, but we're all through philanthropy. And how do we have the best ideas? I want to tell you, a group just like this, every time I have had the pleasure of facilitating those sessions across the state, the big ideas that come out, which you will get to hear out of these sessions, 3 to 5 big ideas will come out of each session and put together in a chapter for a book for Indiana's future. And here's what our hope is. Our hope is that people like you, community leaders, elected officials, church leaders, will see good ideas in there that they'll want to get behind and move forward. And I will tell you, on the philanthropy parts, you will like what they said, because I think that is something already we know Hoosiers are way above the national average in their engagement and their giving and that service. And so how do we become the best state in the nation and in the world to be having people who give back, who do what you all do in your life? Yes, I know a few of you get paid, but usually that pay is not what you would see on the private sector. So for all of us and what you're doing, I want to say thank you. I look forward with the bicentennial visioning and the role I get to play in the state. I look forward because I see these great opportunities that are happening. I just want you to know that whether it's tourism development or community and rural affairs or small business and entrepreneurship, which I oversee, or Housing and Community Development Authority, which we talked about earlier, all those, our goal at the state is really to be your partner. I say we won't be on the tip of the spear, but we can come around you, provide support, do the things, whether it's a resolution in the State House to get something moved forward, or whether it is sometimes adjusting some of our statute, or in some cases being able to bring some dollars to partner with what you're doing. So we appreciate the heavy lift you're doing here. Hope that you'll continue on your endeavors and have a really fun day. I know you're going to have, I wish I could stay. I'm with my husband in band contest this afternoon. So that's my other role when I'm not 95% at the state. I have 5% of my job as a wife. And I'll be supporting my husband in the Forest Park band. So anyway, you guys have a great day today. Thanks for letting me join you.
Thank you.
It was nice. It was nice. You did a great job. All right.
Yeah, thanks, Sue, and have a great time with your band contest. All right, good morning, everybody. Sue mentioned my name is Daniela Vidal, and I'm with the Director of Opportunity Development for the University of Southern Indiana, which used to be the Center for Applied Research. Well, we still have the center, but we just grown into more areas. So very excited to be here this morning, facilitating and helping this group come together and envision some great things for our tri-state area museums and attractions, and obviously the Freedom Heritage Museum as well. I would also like to introduce, I have part of my team here this morning. They're going to help us, with the size of group. You definitely needed to bring some additional backup resources to ensure that we're very effective and efficient with our time this morning. Really appreciate everybody coming here on a Saturday morning and really giving, you can tell the passion in the group that you're here very early to help in this process. So we have Mike Thiessen. He's our I-69 Innovation Corridor Manager. So again, he brings all these great relationships I have from Okra as he goes around our corridor in helping these really big regional economic development initiative. We have Steven Stumpf. He's our new addition to the team. He's the Assistant Director for the Center for Applied Research. And we have Stephanie Eltowil. She's our wonderful program coordinator and glue that holds us together. And so they're all going to helping us with each of the groups as we move forward. So the first thing I want to do today, usually we always want to get to know each other and introduce ourselves. So we're going to do this today, but in a very special and different way. This is going to be a very interactive session. You guys are going to do a lot of the work, and we're just going to help you, guide through the process. But we are going to have you participate a lot and give us a lot of your input. But the first thing we want to do throughout the day, this table and this table are going to, you're going to switch your chairs around, and this is going to be a group. These two tables is going to be another team. These two tables is going to be another team. And then these two tables are going to be our fourth team. Okay? Good job. So what we want to do right now to kick things off is we have 4 stations around the room. Okay? So each of the groups, you're going to stand by your station here in a minute. we're gonna give you instructions, and then you guys can walk up to your areas. And each one of you is gonna take a marker, okay? And since we're all about museums this morning and attractions, you are going to help bring to life a portrait, okay? And a portrait of a person that is going to be our, let's call it museum genie, that is going to grant us the wish, the top wish that we have for our organization. Okay, but the way you're going to paint this portrait is in silence. Each one of you gets to make one trace. And then the next person builds on top of that trace and makes another trace. And then the next person builds from that. You know how, have you ever played that game where you build a story one sentence at a time and then see what comes out? This time you're going to build a portrait one trace at a time in silence. Okay? So once everybody has gone through and put your trace down and see what comes out, then you're going to give it a name. So each one of you gets to put a letter. Okay, so we'll see what name comes out to name your museum genie. Okay? And once we do that, then each of you is going to present your portrait and then present yourselves. We're going to give your name, your organization, and in 3 words or less, what is your top wish for your organization? Okay, that your genie is going to grant you. Okay? So again, we're going to each of these groups, so these 2 tables, we're going to go to these flip chart here. Those 2 tables in the back are going to go to the flip chart over there. These 2 tables in the back, there's one right there by the door, and then these 2 tables come here. We'll give you markers, and then you're gonna have a few minutes to paint your portrait, and we'll see what comes out. Any questions on how we're gonna do this? Pretty simple. Right. So what I'd like to do next, real quick, is we'll go. Each of the 4 of us will share the ideas that kind of bubble up to the surface as the more relevant ones, or the facts. I keep calling them ideas, but they're really facts, we're not to ideas yet. But what are the facts that are more relevant to having sustainability and growth in our museums? So I can go ahead and get started with our group. This thought of having the state tourism helping develop a narrative that connects our organizations together. So that way there's synergies among the different museums, different attractions, if there's kind of some connectivity with the story or the history among them. Also need a sustained effort over time to support growth. I think there's a lot of discussion around, you're so focusing today and then you don't think about what's going to happen when you get there and have that next phase of growth in mind. You can find yourself kind of trapped in a space or with the resources that are not enough. So having always that sustained effort to look at that growth. Develop programs that would be relevant to kids in school. There was a lot of discussion about the importance to really tap into the schools and getting those kids interested, because those are the future generation that will maintain and sustain our attractions. So really a lot of talk around the schools and how can we do more with schools. Let's see what another. Develop need Plan B to foresee changing circumstances. Again, we live in times that are changing rapidly all the time, so how do we ensure that we have that Plan B in mind? Collaborations are key. Aligning good help, volunteers. Again, a lot of you really depend on volunteers to function, so how do we align volunteers with their talents with the right tasks? Leverage social media. Convince people to value history. I think that's at the heart of the survival of a lot of our museums, is how do we convince that next generation to care, to fight that apathy and find it exciting and attractive. Need to fight apathy towards history. Provide relevance to audience. So again, as we think of the mission of our museums or attraction, is how do we make this relevant to the current generation or to the audience that is going to be visiting that attraction. And then the last one is ensure that board stays engaged beyond staff. So we talked about how the beginning of an organization such as Freedom Heritage right now, all the board members pitch in, but once you hire your first staff, a lot of times we see in organizations where the board member said, okay, now they're hired, I don't need to do anything else. And no, I mean, the board needs to do a lot even after you have your staff hired. There's still a lot of support and fundraising and other things that the board needs to be engaged. So how do we ensure that that engagement continues? So those are some of the key ones that came out of our group. So I want to go to
Sure.
Mike.
Some of the, and then some overlaying things here. So what's been dotted is local community is supported. There's also a stereotype of history of not being exciting or relevant, and that history might be sterile. And then there's opportunities for kids and school groups and organizations. I think there was a comment out of Du Bois County that they do community days, and community days are successful. There is no shortage of opportunities with all of our museums. Collaborations, when they happen, are successful. Most of the dots went to that there's a heavy reliance on volunteers. Budgets are tight. There's also some no long-term plans, what's going on maybe in the immediate or distant future. I actually quoted this was great. It's hard for history nerds to think like a business. Need to have programs that appeal to multiple groups and interests. There are board dynamics that may hinder unity. The boards might need training in nonprofit organization management, and that and that exposure may be an issue.
Okay.
Question, the last one, what do you mean, exposure,
Yeah,
maybe
what,
issue, what does that mean?
That could be liability, legal.
Right.
Oh, I see.
That exposure. Okay, thank you. Steven.
All right, first of all, I'm going to say that we were able to capture all my group's awesome ideas on 2 sheets of paper, so I compliment them on their brevity and their environmental awareness. And your handwriting.
Yes,
Well-
that does help.
I try to make it colorful and easy to read so we can pack it all in there. But some really great ideas emerged from our discussion. First of all, looking at what does success look like? Sustainability, obviously it's a concern for everybody. But the big one that jumped out of that section was networking, having strong partnerships. And in part with that, everyone's working for the same common goal. We're not only just working together, but we're all after the same thing, which is more visitors for each of our facilities to really build up that traffic. And then also along with that, having some outside awareness, better participation and community involvement. So getting that message out to the community and getting people involved in participating. We got into the second section and everybody agrees that there needs to be some good organization with mission and passion. You got to have all those elements combined. And also some good government support would be really helpful. And along with that government support, usually that's in the form of grant dollars. So I had a couple people say that we need to have some excellent grant writers. Some have them already, some would like to have them, but that would help with the sustainability issue. And the big thing out of that group was to plant those seeds, talk it up, get the word out about what's going on in your organizations. And then we also had a vote in there for social media, just making sure that you have that presence. Talking about what's holding us back, and everyone agreed, time, that vicious, non-stop cycle. Find a way to get around that and get the time we need to get things done. But then also having a shortage of those worker bees, as they put it. You have to have some extra hands to help move things along. And then looking at if resources were no issue, we had a couple people who want to better engage their donors and their members, some who are doing it now, some who would like to start doing that, but to be able to build those relationships and to also have better programming with what they're doing just to make sure that they're being as efficient as possible. And then finally, we have some that have K-12 programs, some that don't, but we had a vote in there to tailor those K-12 programs to specific ages or grade ranges to make sure that they're as impactful as possible with our younger audiences.
We start seeing some themes coming out that are similar. And Stephanie.
We discussed a lot of the same lines. So when we're talking about what success looks like, it's a heavy list of phone calls, emails, offers for volunteers, support from every angle. What hinders us is obviously public awareness. There's a lot of discussion again around collaboration and networking and really moving forward. Alliance network, bringing museums and sites together. And then, I missed one. There's also more talk on presenting local history, like on broadcasting or public networks, so there's a lot of focus on national or big events, but not really on our local. And then we discussed what would help us achieve success is marketing, promotion, engaging the public and individuals with influence. And they'd like to have more students obviously come in. What hinders us is obviously grant writing, things we'd like to get rid of. Things that we would like to start doing is new state-of-the-art exhibits and events that promote the mission, be able to hire more staff, curators, directors, and see more museums move to more interactive realm, be visual, audio, things that really stimulate and change often.
Technology, definitely leveraging technology. Very good. All right, so again, a lot of great facts. You start seeing some common themes emerge. Again, it helps us all kind of get on the same page as to what are the challenges and the things that are happening around, again, our museums and attractions that can help us find solutions towards growth and sustainability. So what we're going to do next is kind of the harder part of this process. So just kind of bear with me for a minute. I'm going to try to give you an example of how this is going to work. So a lot of times we have these facts, and we know that there's something there. I mean, there's a challenge that we need to, a problem that we need solving. And when we just stated in just all of these facts, it's hard to really find a solution. For example, just really quick, tell me kind of the first things that come to mind if I tell you I'm having a hard time walking. What would you tell me in response to that?
Courage. Get a crutch. Doctor.
I have a chair over here for you.
Get a chair? What else? What else would you tell me?
See a doctor?
I'm having a hard time walking. What would you say to me?
Why?
I hear what the dad would have said.
What would your dad?
He'd say your ass will be hurting in a minute, get back to work.
I love it. So you see, I'm getting all kinds of things thrown at me, like, you better get back to work, go to a specialist, get a chair, why? I really can't do a whole lot with that. I might get more confusion than solutions, right? But what if I say, how might I eliminate the pain that I have in my toe?
Okay.
Then what would you say?
Ice.
Ice? Okay, there's an idea.
Elevate your foot.
Elevate your foot.
Take a pain pill.
Take a pain pill.
What can I do to help?
Great. And just come stand here for 3 hours?
Stop wearing tight shoes.
Very good. So do you see the difference in the quality and specificity of your solutions when I turn the question, first, instead of a big fussy, how can we do this, to a very, how might I fix this? Very specific problem. Now your ideas become a lot more precise and actionable and things that I can go out and do right now. And not get my ass whipped. All right, so with that, what we're going to do now is, keep in mind some of the things that you've heard of all these facts and challenges and things that we just talked about. And I would like to, do a session or brief time right now to turn some of these into how might we say it, okay? So I'm going to just write it one time, and then from then on, I'm just going to say HMW. Okay, so that stands for how might we, okay? All right, so again, thinking of things that you've heard, let's turn that into a how might we statement, okay? So how about we get somebody to throw one at me?
How might we get more volunteers?
Okay, very good.
How might we keep volunteers?
How might we award volunteers?
Avoid one?
Award.
I'm already thinking, like, okay, so that means get more funding so you can hire staff so you don't need to. It's going down a whole different road. So reward volunteers?
Yes. And from what I'm hearing, it sounds like, how might we better collaborate?
Okay.
How might we increase visitors?
Better use technology.
Okay. We leverage technology?
Yes.
Is that correct?
How might we unite?
How might we raise more money?
And with the gain memberships, there's more money than members to our organizations.
People weren't being entertained today, so how might you be better to entertain people better?
Okay.
Find expertise or train board.
How might we train our board? And why would you want to train your board? What do you want to accomplish through that training?
We were saying that board members, they do not understand business. They don't understand how nonprofits work necessarily.
So how might we train board members to understand nonprofit?
Nonprofit management.
Nonprofit management.
How might we create programs that appeal to multiple audiences?
Which the corollary to that is how might we listen better and get feedback.
How might we better educate?
Okay.
Create active ways of learning.
How might we make history more exciting?
How might we communicate our long-term goals?
How might we remove doubt?
Doubt of,
Just negative, doubt of thought, just negative saying we can't do it or we don't have enough money. Remove it.
what else from what we heard?
I heard a lot of how might we get back to the mission, focus on the mission. I also heard a lot of how might we stay relevant, with our marketing and accounting.
How do we stay relevant?
More towards marketing, promotion, how do we stay up to date with the resources we have?
Okay. What else? How can we,
Develop new methods of communication marketing, not always the traditional, just brochures and websites. Because right now, Facebook and Instagram and all that's new, but in 5-10 years, it'll be totally something different. We need to be ready for it.
I mean, my kids, they're beyond Facebook now, it's like, oh, that's old stuff.
How might we remove I and concentrate on we?
How do we infiltrate the school system?
Yep.
Definitely heard a lot of that.
Don't you know schools don't teach history anymore?
How do we engage the office of the Lieutenant Governor to help us?
Sequel to that would be, we have a plan to distribute to her, to show her. We can't make her create it. We need to give her our ideas so she can help us implement them.
Yeah, I like that. How might we present a proposal?
And that's a proposal specifically on.
Yes, everything that we know we
United, like
need,
that.
ideas, yes. I'm just backing up on what he was saying.
But if you think about a proposal just for you, or do you want to do a proposal for kind of a
Unified
collaboration?
Collaboration wide, yeah.
How might we make the Association of Indiana Museums relevant again? Which is what is underlying all of this. I had a phone call from them last spring, and they're trying to figure out how we're going to continue. And what I'm seeing here is that all of us we had something in place, and we're talking about it doesn't fall apart. We have to have a voice. All of us have to have a voice. And we had it in place, so we're gonna let it fall. So, throw that out there for the Association of Indiana Museums.
Okay.
Expand that from the Lieutenant Governor, how might we engage with local elected officials?
How might we create a committee of all museums come one together?
Very good.
School system is, right at the present time, I put up school system, but there's a way to have, they stress STEM science, technology, engineering, and math. Every museum in this room can do that, but we don't interact in that way. And how can we interact with the STEM model that is pushed in every school system in the United States? We tangibly interact.
It's powerful. How about MIM?
Huh?
Museum technology and it says you got STEM. How about MIM?
Well, they're saying now STEAM, so
Yes,
add the
STEAM,
A to
yes,
the STEM,
yes,
it's
yes.
STEAM, that's kind of the new thing. so.
Really?
All right, so I think we've got a good number that captures a lot of what we heard. So really important now that we've diverged, how might we want to try to now converge into the top 2, maybe 3, how might we that can really impact what we're after. Okay, so if you think about a river that's got a lot of logs that are going down the river and creating a jam, right? You can either try to get every log out, which would take a lot of resources, or you can find the 2 or 3 that are creating that jam, and if you take those out, things will start flowing. So that's what we're trying to find. What are the 2 or 3 that if you resolve those, a lot of these other things kind of come behind it. Does that make sense? So we're going to dot again. This time I want you to only use 3 dots, okay? 3 dots per person on this list of 30 how might we's. We're trying to find the top 2 or 3 challenges that we can work on to really find a way to foster sustainability and growth in our museums and attractions. Okay? So 3 dots per person on this list of 30 how might we's. There's, I think there's still dots on the table. If not, we have more.
Well, you won't see them as well.
Oh, Stephanie's. All right. So we're going to pass some more dots around. So just might we raise more money? Yeah, obviously funding it's definitely a big one. So now these are my little how might we post it. So we're going to start building a map here in a minute. So. How might we, let's see what other one is big, get more volunteers? Everybody agree that that's kind of a top one? Is that stated in the appropriate way?
Yeah.
Oh, thank you. Wonderful. Then the next high one is how might we create programs that appeal multiple audiences? Okay. So we have how might we better collaborate with 5? How might we create a committee with all museums coming together? Are those 2 similar or they're 2 different things?
It's really the same thing.
Okay, so that really, if you add those 2 up, then we have another kind of big one there. So how should we word that one? That would be the right statement that kind of encompasses that thought.
How about how would we better collaborate with other museums and like-minded organizations?
Okay, got that?
Join together to collaborate with other museums and like-minded organizations.
So we have increased visitors, gain more membership, create, guess we have really great programs. Make history more exciting. Are those, do we see those kind of combining into one? Can we make one out of that? Is there a kind of common thread there? Make things more attractive to multiple audiences. That's pretty much, that would get you more visitors, right? and make history more exciting. How could we combine those into one thought?
Engage with diverse public.
Okay, so how might we engage with diverse public to increase?
Well, isn't that really kind of already like creating programs to appeal to multiple audiences? I mean, doesn't that really kind of say the same thing? If you get programming that appeals to multiple audiences, you're gonna get more people in there, and, you know, you're gonna create diversity.
Okay.
So I
So
think
you really
that,
kind of already have it.
that ties to leveraging your technology too. You gotta be able to find ways to entertain people with the newer technology. You know, if you can do like Star Trek, you do like holograms or something.
Okay, and these might lead us to that here in a minute. We'll see how. Okay, so we have funding, we have volunteers, we have programs and collaboration. Is there any other theme there that wouldn't be captured either in those 4 areas? All right, so here's how this is gonna work. I'm gonna take one of these and place it in my map here. Okay, so this is what's called a challenge map. We're gonna kind of start digging deeper to see if there's something that's more precise. You know, remember when I said I have I can't walk very well? That's kind of broad, but if I say how might I fix my toe, now you're getting kind of a more precise statement that we can ideate around. Okay, so I'm gonna place this kind of in the middle, but we're gonna go higher, which is more strategic, by asking why. And we're gonna go lower to more tactical by asking what's stopping us. Okay, so that might kind of unpeel the onion until we can get to the heart of the issue. Okay? So why do I need to raise more funding? Okay. Why do you want to keep the doors open?
To educate the public.
Okay, so if you keep going up, you kind of get to, you know, solve world hunger and live in a peaceful society, right? So this is kind of, we think this is probably, you know, a high goal, educate the public, you know. What's stopping us, you've got to have places open. What's stopping us from having a place open, we need funding. See how that works? So we kind of test it up and down.
I was going to say, develop community, to help develop community connections. If you had staffing, then you can increase your community connections, and which are desperately needed.
So is that go in line with keeping the doors open?
It would be in somewhat line with that, right?
Kind of raise more money? Why do we want to do that? To develop community connections? Why? To keep the doors open?
Yeah. Well, I think there's a need for us to be really in contact with the money resources, like the corporate world, and that's a whole nother world, and they want to have positive communications with us. And without staffing, we don't keep those avenues open. And so we're missing the boat with them. They're sitting out there doing their thing, and they can care less about us, unless we know we need them.
Right, we need to have that clear message so that you can align those resources.
You raise money to create more programs. That's another tag that you got over there. With money, you can do some of this other stuff that's already written out.
And again, why do you want to create more programs?
Bring in more people.
Generate
Keep us
interest.
viable.
We need to preserve institutional memory. That's the most important thing that we're doing.
Preserve.
Institutional memory, so that the young people that come along know why we have what we have. That's the whole reason we exist.
This can even go all the way up here. That's a big, kind of lofty goal.
What I'm trying to get at is to I mentioned to you earlier, getting numbers into the building isn't necessarily the main thing. I'm fighting that up there. I'm trying to get them to understand that we're doing something bigger than that.
And And that's a good, and that's exactly why we do this, because sometimes we say, okay, we gotta get more funding. And if we stay there, we may end up bringing, $5 million, but then what are you gonna use it for? Is that really the end goal? Or is there something else that can describe it better, that then you need to get money for? You see?
The thing that describes it the best is Article 8, Section 1 of the Indiana Constitution, which says that we have school systems and museums and things like that to create a better citizenry, an educated citizenry. So that the whole purpose of the schools is to create citizens that understand why we're here and what we're doing. So therefore, when they had to cut the I-STEP test, they cut the social studies, which is a political statement on my part, but I'm trying to get people to understand that that STEM thing doesn't mean anything without us. It doesn't mean anything. They have to have us, as we give them context. And it's more than just getting numbers in.
Okay, so I think that goes in line, so.
Did you get that?
So why do we raise funding? So we have kind of two paths: to create more programs. Why do we want more programs? To get more people coming in. Why do we want more people coming in? To create educated citizens and preserve our institutional memory. Does that kind of follow? We also want to develop community connections, and keep our doors open, and then they connect there. How about going down? What's stopping us from raising more funding? Can you elaborate a little more?
Time limitations, skill set limitations, knowledge of sources, lack of knowledge of sources. I mean, what do you want?
So what do you mean by philanthropy? Is that lack of understanding of what philanthropy, lack of willing to be philanthropic, or what do you mean by that?
The citizens, the common people to understand the need for the history.
So community.
And how to support it with their philanthropy.
Community support for history?
Yes.
Does that capture it?
Competition.
And children.
All right, so what's stopping us from raising funding? We have one kind of thread here, just limited resources, limited time.
after the same dollar.
Also, what's stopping us? Community support for history. What's stopping the community support for history?
Economy.
The government.
Lack of publicity for fundraising events.
They don't value it.
Got that?
Type of thing is the bottom of the list, your political figures. They've got highways to take care of, and salt to buy, and salaries to pay.
So competing.
Competing priorities.
And this is like more practical, but I would say what's stopping community support for history is also maybe lack of publicity. And it's hard to reach out to people.
That's exactly what I said.
Oh, I must have zoned out for a second.
All right, we'll test this here to see what the relationship is.
I think one of the big things that stopped us is having a lack of knowledge how to pursue our financial resources for gifts and for dollars and cents. How to do that properly. We don't have the staffing, nor do we have the understanding how to go talk to people and ask for their financial support.
Nonprofit training.
All right, so let's pause here for a minute, make sure we are aligning these right. So what's stopping us from raising more funding? Time limits, limited resources. What's stopping us from having, what's preventing us from having more resources? Lack of knowledge on how to pursue fundraising and sponsorship. that fit? And the same way we go up, so why do we need knowledge on how to pursue funding and sponsorship? So we have effective use of resources so we can get more funding, right? Another reason why we want to, or what's stopping us from raising more funding is lack of community support for history. And why don't we have community support for history? Competing priorities. Why do we have competing, or what's stopping from having those priorities is the economy, right? But also what's stopping us from competing priorities, I think these are kind of in line, right? So the economy creates competing priorities, not valuing the importance, you put priorities in something else, and lack of publicity of fundraising opportunities. Would that fit? Yes?
I'd also suggest that one of the issues is the overabundance of nonprofits.
Okay.
As much as you can publicize. Someone made a comment a few weeks ago. They thought if they could write down everything, every nonprofit fundraiser that was available, they could be busy 3 out of 4 weekends a month. It's not 4 out of 4.
Yeah, I agree with that, because think about this. Christmas is coming, folks. Check your mailboxes. You're going to get dozens of appeals in the next 6 to 8 weeks from nonprofits. And you can't give to every single one of them. So that's an issue.
But the marketing thing for nonprofits, they know if you don't get it in at the end of the year, it won't be budgeted for the following year. It's the same old repeat. And to me, that needs to be divided where you have 6 months on the first half and 6 months that should be available for the other.
So maybe what's stopping us from raising more funds is having an effective fundraising method, maybe, or how do we, I think there's something here, how do we capture it?
Well, that's
We also-
for tax purposes.
I think museums don't have a captured audience. We don't have a specific captured audience that we can definitely appeal to. I mean, probably the greatest fundraisers are churches, but they have a definite captured audience, which they make their appeal to. And we in museums, we don't have that. I mean, it's very hard for us to get that we have a smaller group of passionate people, so we don't have that great group that going to jump on the bandwagon.
Okay. So what's stopping us from not having competing priorities is that we don't have, it's too broad. We can't, it's hard to appeal to that. Okay, we're getting to more, to the heart of it. I think there's definitely something here that's starting to emerge.
I don't know, I've been thinking about this, and I don't want to run things off track, but I think there's maybe a deeper point here. And I know you'd say I'm a pessimist. I'm not really a pessimist. I'm bold. Okay, I'm actually bold. I've got a relatively low opinion of the world, but I've got a strong sense. I've got a strong sense that there is always something that you can do to improve. So I'm bold. So I'm not saying this to be. I mean, I think it's literally just pessimist / optimist. So I'm not saying this to be negative, but I'm wondering if what we're doing is backwards. We started with the problems, and that discussion is very valuable because it allows us to drill down and get to details and really talk about what's happening on the ground and what's getting in our way. And I don't even know that they're really problems, they're really obstacles. I mean, the only reason we're talking about this is because they're in the way. But I don't know that that's really the issue. What we really are talking about, although we're doing it obliquely, is value. And how to identify the greatest value. Because we can talk about problems, we can talk about we don't have enough money, we don't have enough volunteers, we don't have, people don't understand what we're doing. But that's not really what's going on. What's going on is that we are not demonstrating our value. And we can talk about what our whys are, why we're doing it. But the reality is that the users, the folks that are coming to the museums, that are coming to the events, that are getting these advantages probably are not centrally concerned about why we're doing it. They're centrally concerned about what they're getting out of it. And so if we want the volunteers, if we want the money, if we want the legislative and local government buy-in, if we want to win the competition game and work together, what we really need more than anything else is to demonstrate value and focus on those things where we are delivering value. And I think that encompasses, you can look at those 30 topics, and you can boil them down to demonstrate value.
And that's where we're trying to get to that, boil
Right.
down, but, okay.
That's what I was trying to say, but you said it much better.
But that's exactly how this is where this process leads you. I mean, a lot of times it's hard to get to that, even though it's obviously staring at us, but we're distracted by a lot of these other kind of surface or immediate things like funding and volunteers and audience. But then as we start digging, these real deeper core items start to emerge. So let's
I agree with him. I think with today's society and today's economy, with everything being very tight, if I give to a nonprofit, there are a lot of them out there, I'm really cautious of which one I'm now going to give to, versus before when the economy was really good, you could, dole out some money.
Right.
We see the same thing over at the LST. We like school children to come visit our ship. That's what we're there for, to educate the youth. But when the school corporations start making cuts, and there is no money funded for buses or field trips, guess what? We're cut. And that's what the museum is also going to face. And a lot of it is economic, and there's not a thing you can do about it.
And I think that there's a message. So let's test this one and see where that leads us. So why do we need to demonstrate value? I think a lot of these things we're going to tie.
Can I use history for that? I'm gonna go to George Rogers Clark. Is that all right? Sure. George Rogers Clark had to talk to Patrick Henry in the Virginia legislature to put up this expedition. And then he had to get the Kentuckians to come along. And then he had to convince them to go over and take Kaskaskia, Cahokia, and Vincennes. And he's had a threat from Hamilton. Hamilton comes down and he takes Vincennes back. And then he's sitting over there waiting for them to come and get him. And he looks around at the guys he's got and he says, boys, we're going to have to cross this Illinois prairie in the middle of February and get them first. So he had to convince them to do that. There has to be value in what they were wanting to do. And once he took Vincennes, he sat around Vincennes, he says, boys, we've got to get Detroit. And he couldn't get anybody to go with him. So you have to have the right kind of leadership, you have to have a focus, you got to have the right guy in the right place to get you focused on what you got to do, and you've got to look around and say, is it worth doing? Is it worth dying for? So I don't think we need to die for this, but we need to convince people like George Rogers Clark.
Absolutely. That's like good to right there.
I just wanted to, I'm listening, and I strongly agree with him as well on the value. History itself is value. It's like we get old, but our knowledge is still valuable. And that's one thing that is causing us to, I guess, take the second step, is that why come history is being put on a burner to the side, and when the candlelight goes out, no one is up to date on it. No one is really remembering what got them to where they are today. And we go back to the Clark. I agree with him on that. And to me, that's where the group of all committees come together. If we had a museum committee, each museum taking a member and getting on this committee, and we could say $25 a month. We can afford that as a museum. We wouldn't be existing, in other words. And then when our museum gets into a dire strait, we can go to that committee and say, okay, museum over here on whatever street or wherever city needs some help. But we also can take the committee and form a lobby We need a lobbyist.
All right, so hold that thought, because we're getting into solutions, and we're not in solutions yet. We're trying to define the
Yeah.
problem, but, you know,
Right.
we'll get there.
Yeah.
All right, so, let's see, so if we want, how might we demonstrate value? Why do we need to demonstrate value?
To develop a captured audience.
Because we live in a very what's in it for me society.
So why do we need to demonstrate value? Because
What's in it for me society. Everybody wants to know what's in it for me.
If we demonstrate value, we can go out in the community or in the county or whatever place you might be, and that would provide the connectivity, the ability to get in the door, to ask for the money that you need. If you have value, you can demonstrate that and get in the door.
So we get to funding, that's maybe summarized too. Why we want to demonstrate value? To attract funding. Why else do we, so we have the capture audience, the funding, competing, kind of, this goes with all these competing priorities, you know, you want to do what's going to impact you the most, right? Any other reason why we need to demonstrate value?
I don't know if there's a really concise way to say this, but I heard this wonderful quote somewhere, I forget. It's like, but it goes, if you look forward without looking back, then you're going nowhere. You have to look back to see, like, what lessons you can learn from it, so as not to make history repeat make the same mistakes over and over again. So
to have a better future, you need to respect the past.
Something like that, I guess. Like I said, I don't know the best.
Might we value our past to drive to a future?
Something like, I guess that could work.
Well, Indiana says, relive the past, ignite the future. That's what Indiana tourism says.
Thank you.
Relive our past to ignite our future. Love it. Wonder who else might came up with that.
The problem is we're preaching to the choir here. We all believe that, but we gotta convince the people out in the community of that.
Yeah, you're right.
So,
They cut
let's
social
go, that's a
studies
great
out.
segue to what's stopping us from demonstrating our value that you all get, but maybe the general community don't get. What's stopping us from that?
Yeah, they said, you've already mentioned school kids.
It's come up, but
Okay,
it's a
well,
good time to bring it.
if you bring the kids in and you get their interest, it's kind of like the reverse of dumbing down of America.
Mhm.
You get their interest when they're young, then they go home, especially if they got grandparents that have been through a war. And it's kind of the same thing they do with Sundays or vacation Bible school. You send the kids to the school, to the church, they come home, tell mom and dad like it, mom and dad end up going.
So what's stopping us from demonstrating the value is lack of reaching out to children, so.
Yeah, I'd
how might
invite
we
every
reach out to-
school, every grade school, kindergarten.
So how might we reach out to school
Yeah.
kids? Okay. And then-
I think we need to go to the car dealerships and ask them to donate vans to our museum so we can go get the kids when the buses can't bring them. That benefits value.
All right, so what's stopping us from demonstrating value? We need to reach out to school kids. Why do we want to reach out to school kids? To demonstrate value. There's a good relationship, strong relationship there.
And just for planning, you might have this the first thing in the morning. Buses bring the kids to school, they pick them up directly there, bring them here. And then also the last thing of the day, they have their program here, they take the kids back to school, or the buses are there to take the kids back home.
Right, get to
Eliminates a lot of-
solutions.
Yeah, it
We'll
eliminates a
come
lot
to
of
that in a minute.
transportation costs.
We'll get those ideas, yep.
We haven't done our market research. We don't understand the consumers and what it is that they want and what triggers their interest. We need to do it like the big corporations do, Coke, Pepsi, all those folks know exactly what the consumers want. They meet that need. We need to meet the need of our audiences.
So what's stopping us from demonstrating value? We don't understand our market audience. Okay. What else is stopping us from demonstrating value?
Lack of staff and volunteers.
Okay.
Retired military would be good there.
So that's this one. So why do we need to get more staff and volunteers? Or how, actually, you could say, how might we get more? That's in a challenge form. How might we get more staff and volunteers would be our challenge statement, but why do we want to have more staff and volunteers? So we can demonstrate our value? Or what's stopping us from demonstrating our value? Not having,
But it can go the other way. If we demonstrate value, we'll get more staff and volunteers.
exactly.
I think maybe we don't know our own value.
It is.
You know, to a certain extent, we don't know our own value, right? I mean, we represent various museums and small organizations across, southwestern Indiana, but maybe we don't have a grand narrative that sort of brings us all together.
Or a medium in which to spread that message.
Yeah, I think what you're talking about is the story you're working towards. Really.
Yeah, I mean, we're Vincennes, we're Du Bois. I mean, how do we value each other and bring it all together so that we can send out a unified message?
So first we need to define it before we can demonstrate it, right? We first know kind of what that is, so we can then show that it's real, and then communicate it.
I can't tell you the number of times I've had people come in the museum and say, I hated history in school, it was boring, but now I'm more interested in it. So part of the problem is how it's presented in the schools. But part of it is that as people get older, all of a sudden they start to find interest in it. So the younger people don't really care about it. And there's exceptions to that. I was one of them. But I don't know how they get over that.
I'll be honest.
All right, go ahead, and then we go with you.
I'm a STEM guy by background, and I know that my connection to it was personal. And, apart from the different historical periods and things that are interesting to me, what really pulls me in, and I think has pulled in kind of the non-history folks that I know of, is that personal link. And it starts with family history, and it starts with local history. And it's that, very, very close interest. Your grandmother did this, and here's how she worked, and here's how she lived, and this was her story. Or, in my family had a great aunt that was a witch, and so we find out about that, and, and things like that.
Like a real witch?
Like a real witch.
Salem and all that stuff?
England, but yeah.
Migrated to the US.
But, and that sort of thing. And so you find out about those family stories, and you get that connection where you start talking about your family genealogy and which parts of the world you came from, and what they went through, and that builds that immediate intimate link, and that's maybe the starting point, the umbilicus. And when you're taught that in school, it's all this top-down stuff. And so, you're talking about, Charlemagne and whatnot, and it's instead of your grandfather or your great uncle or, all these other links that make it real, make it personal.
So how might we make history personal?
Yeah.
That's a good statement.
The other part about volunteers is when I get volunteers, and I also get community service people in that are doing hours, I have to take the time with them to find out what their interest is, what their skills are, and then put them in the right place. So if I find somebody, for example, that's good at the military stuff, and I channel them that direction, or that if they're good at this or good at that, So you try to find out what they want to do. Again, why they're connected here. Why did they come in? What was it they wanted to do? And then let them do it.
So how might we optimize the use of our volunteers?
That takes time, and you have to listen to what they're doing.
The definition of interpretation is serve as a catalyst between the interests of our visitors and the meanings of the resource. And that's exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah.
So how do you come that again?
How
might we?
In interpretation, the definition of interpretation is a catalyst between the interest of the visitors and the meaning of the resource.
So how might we catalyze interest? How about we catalyze interest of the resource?
Of the visitor
Of the visitor.
and meanings of the resource.
Accelerate. Would that be a herd instinct?
Connect the story to the organization.
Yeah, well, it's
great.
there's no word of catalyze. Trust me.
He has a great point, because that also looks at, we definitely need to verify what the achievement of the museum has been doing. What has been the achievements, and not just the fact of
So
a
that's kind of
museum and you come. Yeah,
demonstrate your
the
value.
values, yeah.
So what I'm hearing, and let me see if this captures it, so we can. Actually, you had a thought. I want to lose your thought before we.
Well, yeah, I mean, what I think is really an important point we might be missing. I mean, all of us in this room are you know, it's kind of like preaching to the choir. We're all kind of history nerds. We get it. We know why we want to come. We know why we want to preserve history. But in order to get kids and families, we're going to have to look at the entertainment aspect of it, because kids have so many competing priorities. I mean, look at what they like to do. They like to play on video games, like to participate in sports, all the things that they like to do. We're going to have to figure out a way to provide entertainment or activities for them to do at your museum that's fun, so they're going to want to come. I mean, they don't necessarily want to come and look at a statue or a picture or a piece of equipment and say, oh, that's really, I mean, they want something that's going to entertain them. Why? They want to come back. You want them to come back.
Right.
So entertainment value is something we're going to have to look at if you really want the kids and families to come.
Well, I've had two personal experiences, I think, with that. And one is, as a school administrator, we took a gifted and talented kids to Dearborn, Michigan to see the Henry Ford Museum. That's one of the big experiences, to see the advancement of technology. You know, and our experience there with kids, without having a pre-development strategy to show them what they were, that those people looked at that, had no idea. They always thought that Dad had a combine, a tractor. They never understood what an old wooden farm plow was, or the best one was wash machines. They always understood their mom had a washer and dryer, an automatic one, not the old scrub boarder like that. To them it was junk. They had no interest in it, didn't want to care about it unless we pre-planned it and pre-taught them that. And another thing I think really is, you know, you have to really understand that maybe some people, even young adults, don't. I do student teaching supervision for IU, and I had a teacher here in Evansville in a social studies class. I said, was teaching World War history. She didn't understand that the P-47, the LST, and the Willis Jeep was made right here in Evansville.
It's such a
And she
huge-
would not emphasize it. I said, why don't you emphasize that in your daily instruction? She looked at me like I was crazy.
And he makes such an impact. I just interject here, a small, like, fall break was a couple weeks ago. I had my kids, and I said, what do we do? We're just driving, and my daughter's like, oh, let's go to Evansville Museum. I hadn't been there in a long time. And she's 14, and I have my 9-year-old, and the oldest one is still at school. And so we go in, had a wonderful time, and so we're going through the history section of it, and they realize all this connection of Evansville to, you know, the war efforts and everything that was manufactured here. And even though, you know, we're very involved in the community, we talk about this a lot, but just for them to see the artifacts and the old newspapers, I mean, they both said at the same time, like, oh, wow, so Evansville is relevant. And that was my 9-year-old saying that, oh, so Evansville is relevant, and it was really important. I'm like, yeah. And so like, oh, wow, I thought this was just a little town. And so it really makes such a connection, just seeing that and feeling proud of, you know, being here. So that's huge, I mean, to be able to emphasize that. But anyway, so I think from all I'm hearing, I might make an executive decision here, but would you agree? So we're trying to find now the statement or statements that we can now ideate around, create some ideas around. So I'm seeing kind of three distinct buckets that would really solve a lot of these. How might we define our value? How might we demonstrate our value? And how might we communicate our value? Because then those three, when you first define it, you have to demonstrate it, and demonstrate it means, how do you engage better the children? How do you engage? So those three, if we start coming up with ideas, I think would cover a lot of these. So if you demonstrate it, you have a way to communicate it, you're going to attract the volunteers, the funding, the audience. Would you agree that that captures it?
Yeah, it all falls under family, because like you're saying, grandpa takes in grandchild. There's an article in the Parade 25 years ago about the power of a grandpa. Kids, about keeping kids off drugs. It says, they're ashamed to lie to grandma and grandpa, they'll climb their mom and dad. But the connection between the grandkids and the grandparent and the history the grandparent has, that's what will tie it all together. The parents are working. That's why you get all the retired military grandparents and grandmas, grandpas working it, bringing their younger preschool kids. They'll tell, they'll go to school in 2 years and tell all their other kids what a great time it was, and then that's where your school programs come from.
Yep. I think that kind of, I wanted to get 4 because I'm going to, okay. Very good. Very good. All right, so one last thing that I will always do before ending these meetings. Oh, by the way, I did want to point out that this is a representation of all your wishes that you ask your genie. So hopefully, we can see a connection with some of these things that came out to get us on the road to get your wishes granted. So I think it's a visual representation of what you came in here with, your hopes and aspirations for your groups. All right, so the last thing we always like to do, again, it helps us improve our process as well, is just do what we call a debrief. So just ask the group, what parts of the process itself that we went through today, and play the facility, everything about today, what part do you think was valuable, was helpful to you? That you think?
Networking.
Brainstorming?
Networking.
Building a network? Okay, good.
The presentation.
Okay.
You kept us busy.
Involved,
communicating,
Okay.
and it wasn't about the food.
But next time, T-bone steaks.
Oh, well, you're gonna have to take that to Rick.
It kept your attention.
Okay, good. So you kept engaged. Excellent.
Having laid out next steps, not just come up with
Right.
a lot of lists.
Good.
I think the beginning, when you allowed us to figure our genie, and we did it as a group. It wasn't just one thought of a genie coming out of a bottle.
Right.
And ideas came out of the bottle. And I believe that the structure way you did it, you allow introduction just by that format right there.
Good. Very good. How about what things could have been better? What can we improve for next time?
A tour.
Oh, you have time for a tour. That's why I ended early. Now you can go.
for next time, maybe we could have at least an email, and we can print it out ourselves, of all these things we've already discussed, we don't keep going back to this,
Okay.
and move forward.
Perfect.
Have a summary of this.
Yeah, a handout of this,
Right.
what we just did at the next one.
And we'll word process everything and
Okay.
put out a report.
When are you gonna have it out?
Taking a bunch of notes.
How long is it gonna be before you get it out?
Oh, Stephanie, she whips this out in a week.
3 days.
So let's put that as an action item.
First thing Monday morning, right, Mark?
You don't you? Yeah, so, about 24 hours.
It's instant nowadays, everything, right?
Go, Mark.
It's still early today.
You got a printer and typewriter here, right?
How about I'll also put, shouldn't take too long. Okay. All right, what else could be better? Anything else? Go home? All right, well, thank you very much, everybody. I think this was a very good session. I enjoyed it.